Crossroads, Hagerstown. Story 9. The Divide. In Hagerstown, you could drive 10 minutes and cross a border nobody ever wrote down. No welcome sign, no guard booth, just a change in pavement, a change in porch paint, a change in the way the air felt. On one side, manicured lawns, tall fences, two-car garages, and a quiet that sounded like money. On the other, cracked sidewalks, bars on windows, loitering warnings nobody enforced, and a quiet that sounded like fear. That invisible border was the divide, and most days, people acted like it didn't exist, until it did. Aiden Park stood on a small rise overlooking the warehouse district, hands in his coat pockets, watching his future take shape. The site below him was fenced off with bright orange barriers, and a banner stretched across the entrance. Parkstone Lofts, modern living coming soon. Construction equipment sat like sleeping animals. A row of old brick buildings waited to be carved into luxury. Aiden could already see the before and after photos in his head. He wasn't from Hagerstown, not originally. He'd grown up in Frederick, where people wore their success like a uniform and called it hard work. He'd gone to college, worked in commercial real estate, learned how to speak in smooth sentences about revitalization while quietly counting profit margins. Then he discovered Hagerstown, a town close enough to DC and Baltimore to be valuable, a town bruised enough to be cheap, a town full of neglected buildings that could be bought, flipped, and resold to people who said they wanted authentic character as long as the character didn't include poverty. Aiden saw a market. He saw opportunity. He also saw a story he could sell, not just lofts, a narrative. We're saving the city. And in Hagerstown, people were desperate for someone to say that. Aiden's phone buzzed. A text from Nathan Graves, his project manager. Council meeting at 6. Shelter issue on agenda. Whitaker wants you there. Aiden exhaled slowly. The shelter. Jonathan Street. Maria Alvarez. The woman who ran the shelter with her spine straight and her eyes sharp enough to cut through donor talk. Aiden had heard about her speech at the council meeting last week. He'd seen the clip online, shared by activists and criticized by concerned citizens. Aiden didn't like being criticized, not because he couldn't handle it, because criticism complicated business. He looked down at the construction site again. He told himself the shelter wasn't his problem, but in a town like this, everything was connected, and the people who ran things, the Whitakers, the Masons, the old families, preferred solutions that didn't make noise. Aiden turned toward his car. He had a meeting to attend, and he had a divide to manage. Across town, on the other side of the invisible border, Maria Alvarez stood on Jonathan Street with her arms crossed, watching a city inspector walk around her shelter with a clipboard. The inspector was young, polite, uncomfortable. He kept avoiding Maria's eyes like they carried accusation. "You're doing a routine inspection?" Maria asked. The inspector cleared his throat. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "Just standard." Maria stared at him. "Standard," she repeated. The inspector nodded, flipping pages. "Fire exits," he murmured. "Occupancy limits, HVAC." Maria watched him move. She'd been running this shelter long enough to know when routine meant pressure. The building had been fine for years. Now suddenly, it needed scrutiny. This was how displacement worked. Not with bulldozers first, with paperwork, with warnings, with citations. A slow squeeze until you gave up on your own. Maria followed him as he checked the basement stairwell. "You know why you're here?" Maria said calmly. The inspector paused. He sighed. "I don't make the decisions," he said quietly. Maria nodded once. "I know," she said. "You just carry them." The inspector looked at her, guilt flickering in his eyes. Maria's phone buzzed. A message from Anne. "Council meeting tonight. Whitaker and Parkstone there. We should go." Maria read it, jaw tightening. She looked up. "You done?" she asked the inspector. He nodded. I'll file my report," he said. Maria's voice stayed steady. "File it," she said. "And remember, you walked through a building full of people who will sleep outside if your report becomes a weapon." The inspector swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered. Maria watched him leave. Then she turned back toward the shelter. Inside, Eli sat near the window, staring out like he could smell trouble coming. Tasha was folding donated clothes with quick hands. Devin sat in the corner, silent. Reggie Cole stood near the back, fixing a broken chair like he could repair the world one screw at a time. Maria walked in and clapped her hands once. "Tonight," she said, voice firm, "we're going to the council meeting." Heads lifted, eyes sharpened. Fear stirred. Eli grunted. "Same old dance," Eli muttered. Maria looked at him. "Not if we stop dancing," she said. Reggie looked up. "You want me to come?" he asked. Maria studied him. "You good in public?" she asked. Reggie's jaw tightened. "No," he admitted, "but I'll do it." Maria nodded. "Then let's go," she said. The council chambers filled fast. It was the kind of meeting that looked civic but felt like war. One side of the room held business owners, developers, people in clean clothes who used words like investment and safety like prayer. The other side held shelter volunteers, residents, activists, people in worn coats who used words like survival and human like weapons. At the front, council members sat behind microphones trying to look neutral while the town pulled at them. Elaine Whitaker sat near the center, posture perfect, expression composed. Aiden Park sat 2 seats behind her, hands folded neatly, eyes calm. He wore a suit that didn't belong to Jonathan Street. Maria walked in with her group and felt the temperature shift. Whispers rippled as people recognized Reggie. Some looked afraid, some looked disgusted, some looked curious. Aiden's eyes flicked toward Maria. He studied her for a moment, then looked away. To him, she was an obstacle. To Maria, he was a machine with a smile. The meeting began. Agenda items moved quickly until it reached the one everyone had come for. Item 7, the clerk announced, Jonathan Street property redevelopment and service relocation. Maria's jaw tightened. That phrase, service relocation, made human lives sound like furniture. Elaine Whitaker leaned into her microphone. "We've received multiple complaints about the shelter's impact on the surrounding community," Elaine began. The words were calm, smooth. Maria felt anger rise. Elaine continued. "We are committed to supporting vulnerable populations," Elaine said, while also ensuring public safety and neighborhood revitalization. Aiden watched the room carefully, face neutral. Maria recognized the language. It was the language of compromise that always leaned toward power. Elaine finished and nodded toward Aiden. "Mr. Park," Elaine said, "you may speak." Aiden stood smoothly, like he'd practiced his posture in front of a mirror. "Thank you, Councilwoman," he said. "Thank you, council members and community." His voice was confident, measured. He spoke like someone selling peace. "Parkstone's goal is to bring new life to this corridor," Aiden said. "We want to attract businesses, residents, and long-term growth." He gestured slightly, as if the words growth and life were gifts. "I understand there are concerns about displacement," he said, "but redevelopment is not displacement, it's improvement." Maria's fingers tightened. Aiden continued. "We have offered transitional support," he said. "We're in discussions with several organizations to relocate services." He paused, letting the words sound reasonable. "The truth," Aiden said, "is that the shelter is not sustainable in its current location." Maria felt a murmur ripple behind her, anger, disbelief. Aiden's eyes stayed calm. "We can't fix Hagerstown by leaving it as it is," Aiden said. "We have to evolve." Then he sat down, composed. Maria's chest tightened. She'd heard that word before. Evolve. It always meant the poor got pushed somewhere else. Public comment began. A few residents spoke about safety, about needles in alleys, about those people congregating. A business owner complained about foot traffic. A church member asked the council to please think about families. Then Maria's name was called. Maria stood. She walked to the microphone like she was walking into a storm. The room quieted. Maria adjusted the mic. "My name is Maria Alvarez," she said, "and I run the shelter on Jonathan Street." She looked directly at Aiden, then at Elaine, then at the council. "You want to talk about sustainability?" she asked calmly. "Let's talk about what's unsustainable." Her voice sharpened. "What's unsustainable is pretending that people disappear when you move them," she said. "What's unsustainable is thinking you can renovate buildings without dealing with the humans who live outside them. She gestured behind her. Eli fought for this country, she said. Tasha has children. Devin... She paused, searching for words. Devin is trying. Maria's eyes locked onto Aiden. You say redevelopment isn't displacement, Maria said. Then answer me. Where do they go? Aiden's face stayed neutral. Maria continued before he could speak. You want coffee shops and lofts, Maria said. Fine, but don't sell it as salvation. Salvation doesn't come from pushing desperate people into darker corners. The room buzzed. Maria leaned closer. And don't use the word evolve like you're talking about nature, she said. You're talking about money. She stepped back. Silence held for a beat. Then Maria finished. If you close that shelter, she said, voice steady, you're not cleaning up the city. You're washing your hands. Maria stepped away from the mic. Applause rose from her side of the room. Boos rose from the other. Elaine Whitaker's face stayed composed. Aiden watched Maria with eyes that were calmer than they should have been. Public comment continued. Eli spoke, Tasha spoke, Anne spoke. Then Reggie's name was called. A ripple moved through the room. Reggie stood slowly, jaw tight. He walked to the mic. His palms were sweating, but his voice came out steady. My name is Reggie Cole, he said. Whispers. Reggie held his ground. I've been on both sides of this town, he said quietly. I've been the problem people talk about at meetings like this. He paused, letting the admission land. And I've been the man who didn't have nowhere to go, he continued. The man who slept in cars, the man who thought the streets were the only family left. Reggie's eyes flicked toward Aiden. You think you can build over that? Reggie asked. You think you can put up lofts and pretend the hunger goes away? Reggie's jaw tightened. Hagerstown got a divide, he said, and you can't patch it with paint. He stepped back from the mic. The room held silence again. Then Aiden stood unexpectedly. He didn't go to the mic. He spoke from his seat, voice calm. With respect, Aiden said, the shelter is not the only solution. Maria's spine stiffened. Aiden continued. We have to balance compassion with progress, he said. Maria turned toward him. And who gets to define progress? Maria demanded, voice rising. The room murmured. Aiden's face stayed composed. The community, he said. Maria laughed sharply. The community? She repeated. Which community? Beaver Creek? The one behind gates? Elaine Whitaker's eyes narrowed slightly. Maria's voice sharpened. You all want the shelter gone because it's messy, Maria said. Because it makes you uncomfortable. Because it reminds you the town's pain is real. Aiden's jaw tightened slightly. It's not about discomfort, Aiden said. It's about safety. Maria stepped forward. You want to talk safety? She snapped. Then fund mental health. Fund addiction treatment. Fund job programs. Fund housing. But you don't do that. Aiden's voice stayed calm. We're investing in... He started. Maria cut him off. No, she said fiercely. You're investing in property. That's different. The room buzzed louder. Elaine Whitaker leaned into her mic, voice controlled. Order, she said. Order, please. But the room didn't want order anymore. The divide was speaking, and it was loud. After the meeting, people spilled into the hallway like pressure being released. Arguments broke out in pockets. Aiden stepped away from the council desk, heading toward the exit with Nathan at his side. Maria followed him. Not running, not shouting, just walking with purpose. Aiden reached the hallway near the glass doors. Maria stepped into his path. Aiden stopped, surprised. His eyes studied her, calm. Yes? He asked politely, like she was a customer. Maria stared at him. You ever been inside the shelter? She asked. Aiden blinked. He hesitated. No, he admitted. I haven't. Maria nodded slowly. Then you don't get to talk about sustainability, she said quietly. You don't get to talk about safety. You don't know what you're moving. Aiden's jaw tightened. I know exactly what I'm doing, he said. Maria leaned closer. No, she whispered. You know what you're building. That's different. Aiden's eyes hardened slightly. Do you have an alternative? He asked. Because yelling at meetings doesn't create housing. Maria's voice stayed low. I'm not yelling, she said. I'm warning you. Aiden's eyes narrowed. Warning me? He repeated. Maria nodded once. This town doesn't like being erased, she said. And the people you're pushing, they don't just vanish. They get desperate. Aiden's face stayed calm, but something shifted in his eyes. Threat or reality? Maria stepped back. Come to the shelter, she said. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. See the line outside. Look people in the face. Then tell me again about progress. Aiden stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded slightly. Fine, he said. I'll come. Maria held his gaze. Good, she said. Then she turned away. Aiden watched her go, jaw tight. Nathan leaned in close to Aiden. You don't have to do that, Nathan whispered. Aiden's voice was flat. Yes, I do, he said, because Aiden didn't like being challenged, and because somewhere inside his polished confidence, a small piece of him wanted to believe he wasn't a villain. The next morning, Aiden Park drove down Jonathan Street at 5:55 a.m. It was still dark, streetlights flickered, the buildings looked tired. Aiden's car looked wrong here, too clean, too expensive. He parked near the shelter. He stepped out into the cold, and he stopped, because there was already a line. Men and women standing quietly near the door, hoods up, hands shoved deep in pockets against the cold. Some looked older than they were. Some looked young enough to be his younger siblings. Aiden stared at them. They didn't look like a service population. They looked like people. The door opened. Maria stepped out. She saw Aiden immediately. She didn't smile. She just nodded toward the door. Come in, she said. Aiden hesitated. Then he walked forward, past the line of people who watched him with tired eyes. He stepped inside the shelter. Warm air hit him, the smell of instant coffee, the hum of tired life. Aiden looked around. Bunk beds, blankets, a kettle boiling, a veteran with shaking hands, a young mother holding her child close. Maria stood beside him, arms crossed. This, Maria said quietly, is what you're relocating. Aiden stared. He felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest, not guilt, not pity, something sharper, recognition. Because for the first time, he understood the divide wasn't a metaphor. It was a place, a room, a line, a cold morning, and he was standing on the wrong side of it. Maria watched him. You still want to call it progress? She asked softly. Aiden swallowed. He looked at the people. He looked at the shelter. He looked at the worn walls holding up human lives. Then he exhaled slowly. No, he admitted quietly. Maria held his gaze. Good, she said. Now do something that costs you. Aiden stared at her, throat tight, because that was the true definition of progress. Not what you built, what you sacrificed. And in Hagerstown, sacrifice was the only bridge across the divide. This concludes Story 9. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe.